There comes a moment in every life when the weight you've been carrying quietly asks a question your soul can no longer ignore. Why am I living for everyone else but myself? It doesn't arrive with noise or drama. It comes softly, often in exhaustion, in disappointment, in the strange emptiness that lingers even after you've done everything right. You followed the rules. You pleased the people. You explained yourself 1,000 times, and still something inside you feels caged. This is the moment of awakening. This is where freedom begins. Not when the world changes, but when you finally decide that your life is too precious to be ruled by opinions, expectations, and fear. This message is not about becoming careless. It is about becoming free. Caring too much is not kindness when it costs you your joy. It is not love when it silences your truth. Many people confuse self-betrayal with humility, obedience with goodness, and suffering with strength. You were taught, directly or indirectly, that your worth depends on approval, that peace comes from being accepted, and that survival means shrinking yourself so others remain comfortable. But every time you abandon your voice to keep the peace, you lose a piece of your life. Every time you choose silence over truth, you delay your becoming. Caring too much slowly drains the color from your days until life becomes something you endure instead of something you live. One of the greatest lies you've been taught is that if you care enough, explain enough, give enough, you can control how people see you, treat you, or stay with you. You cannot. You never could. No amount of effort can make the wrong people value you. The wounded treat you gently, or the unready grow with you. The more you chase understanding from those committed to misunderstanding you, the more exhausted you become. Freedom begins the moment you realize that your peace is not a negotiation. It is a decision. And that decision starts with letting go of the need to manage perceptions that were never yours to carry. To stop caring in the way that imprisons you is to reclaim your inner authority. It is choosing to trust your own feelings without asking permission. It is honoring your instincts without apologizing. It is recognizing that you do not need to earn rest, joy, or dignity. You were born deserving. When you stop living as a response to others, you begin living as an expression of yourself. You speak with clarity. You move with intention. You stop explaining your boundaries and start embodying them. This is not rebellion. This is alignment. This is what it feels like to come home to yourself. Before freedom settles in, fear always rises. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being labeled selfish. Fear of being alone. But hear this clearly. The loneliness you fear is often lighter than the emptiness you've been carrying while surrounded by people who do not truly see you. Growth will cost you certain versions of yourself and certain relationships attached to that version. That is not loss. That is evolution. You were never meant to stay small, to remain included. You were meant to expand, even if it means walking alone for a season. This is where your life begins to breathe again. Not when everyone agrees with you, but when you agree with yourself. Not when you are applauded, but when you are at peace. Do not rush this moment. Awakening is sacred. And once you see clearly, you can never go back to living asleep. Much of what you carry was never chosen. It was inherited. Expectations passed down quietly. Rules absorbed without consent. Emotional responsibilities assigned before you had language to question them. You learned early how to read rooms, how to soften your needs, how to become what was required in order to be loved. Over time, this adaptation hardened into identity. You stopped asking, "Who am I?" and started asking, "Who do they need me to be?" Unlearning these chains is not an act of disrespect. It is an act of self-rescue. You are allowed to lay down what was placed on you before you were strong enough to refuse. Guilt is often mistaken for conscience, but more often, it is conditioning. It keeps you tethered to roles that drain you, promises that limit you, and versions of yourself that no longer fit. You feel guilty for resting, guilty for saying no, guilty for changing. But guilt loses its grip the moment you realize this truth. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions at the expense of your own well-being. Compassion does not require self-erasure. Love does not demand constant sacrifice. Freedom begins when you stop punishing yourself for choosing life. There is a quiet courage in allowing disappointment to exist without rushing to fix it. When you stop over-explaining, stop justifying, stop bending to ease the discomfort of others, something powerful happens. You reclaim time, energy, and dignity. Disappointment is not a failure of character. It is evidence of boundaries. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some will mourn the version of you they could control. Let them. Your task is not to be universally approved. It is to be deeply aligned. An alignment always costs something, but it gives you everything. Emotional independence does not mean isolation. It means sovereignty. It means you can care without collapsing, love without losing yourself, and listen without surrendering your truth. You stop reacting to every opinion. You stop internalizing every judgment. You learn to witness emotions without becoming owned by them. This shift is subtle, but life-changing. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of comply. And in that space between stimulus and response, your true freedom lives. The voice inside you matters more than any other. If it is harsh, fearful, or dismissive, freedom will always feel distant. Rewriting your inner narrative is an act of daily devotion. You replace I should with I choose. You replace what will they think with what do I need. You replace survival language with living language. Over time, this inner shift becomes visible. Your posture changes. Your presence deepens. You stop chasing validation because you are no longer empty of yourself. As the chains loosen, light begins to enter places that were once closed off by fear and obligation. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering who you were before you learned to shrink. This work is changing you, even if you can't fully see it yet. There is a point where holding on no longer means loyalty. It means delay. You hold on to conversations that ended long ago, to apologies that will never come, to people who benefited from your silence. At first, letting go feels like failure, as if endurance were proof of virtue. But the truth is quieter and braver. Knowing when to release is wisdom. Some things do not end because you didn't try hard enough. They end because they have taken you as far as they can. Freedom begins when you stop dragging yesterday into today and allow your hands to be empty enough to receive what is next. One of the deepest traps is the belief that closure comes from others. You wait for explanations, acknowledgments, or changed behavior before allowing yourself peace. But closure is not something granted. It is something chosen. When you decide that your healing does not require another person's participation, you step into emotional authority. You stop reopening wounds just to prove they hurt. You stop revisiting stories that no longer define you. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means refusing to let the past continue to negotiate your future. Letting go carries grief, even when the release is right. Grief does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means you care deeply. You can mourn what could have been without returning to what was. You can honor the lessons without reliving the pain. When you allow grief to pass through, instead of trapping it inside, it softens into wisdom. It teaches you where your heart is tender and where your boundaries must be strong. Freedom is not the absence of sorrow. It is the refusal to live imprisoned by it. There is a quiet revolution in choosing yourself without announcement, without justification, without apology. You do not need to explain your growth to those committed to misunderstanding it. You do not need permission to evolve beyond old agreements. When you stop seeking approval, your decisions become cleaner, your energy steadier, your path clearer. This is not selfishness. It is self-respect. You are no longer abandoning yourself to prove loyalty to others. You are standing with yourself, and that changes everything. Freedom does not harden you, it refines you. You become softer where it is safe and firmer where it is necessary. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy or sacrifice with love. You learn that true strength is gentle but unmovable. You listen deeply, speak honestly, and walk away calmly when alignment is lost. This balance is not learned overnight. It is earned through self-trust, and once earned, it becomes unshakable. As you release what no longer fits, space opens within you. Space for clarity, peace, and possibility. You are no longer defined by what you endure, but by what you choose. You are stepping into a lighter way of being. For a long time, survival shaped your decisions. You learned to anticipate reactions, avoid conflict, and choose what felt safest rather than what felt true. Survival mode is clever, but it is exhausting. Living freely requires a different posture, one rooted in intention. You begin to ask not what will protect me, but what will align me. This shift changes the way you move through the world. Your choices slow down. Your yes becomes deliberate. Your no becomes peaceful. And life, once reactive and hurried, starts to feel authored by you. Truth is not a dramatic declaration, it is a daily practice. It shows up in the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening, in the boundaries you honor when it would be easier to abandon them, in the honesty you choose, even when it costs approval. Living from truth does not mean you never feel fear. It means fear no longer leads. You listen to it, thank it for the warning, and then decide from a deeper place. Over time, this practice builds integrity, and integrity builds peace that does not depend on circumstances. One of the quiet freedoms you reclaim is joy without permission. You stop waiting for the right moment, the perfect conditions, or universal approval to feel alive. You allow laughter to return. You allow rest to be sacred. You allow pleasure to be simple. This joy is not loud or performative. It is rooted. It does not prove anything. It simply exists. And in a world that profits from your exhaustion, choosing joy becomes a radical act of self-respect. Purpose does not arrive fully formed. It reveals itself as you clear what blocks it. When fear loosens its grip, curiosity awakens. When obligation fades, passion resurfaces. You begin to notice what energizes you instead of what drains you. Purpose is not always grand. It is often quiet, consistent, and deeply personal. It is found in the work that feels meaningful, the conversations that feel honest, the contributions that feel true. Freedom does not give you purpose. It removes the noise so you can hear it. Comparison loses its power when you commit to your own path. You stop measuring your progress against timelines that were never meant for you. You honor your pace. You trust your seasons. Living freely means understanding that another person's success does not diminish your own becoming. There is room for everyone to live fully without imitation. When you release comparison, envy dissolves and gratitude takes its place. You begin to see your life not as behind or ahead, but as exactly where it needs to be. Living from truth reshapes you quietly but completely. You no longer move through life bracing for impact. You move with openness and strength. There is a quiet strength that forms when you begin to trust yourself again. Not the loud confidence that seeks attention, but the steady knowing that you can meet whatever life brings without abandoning yourself. Self-trust is built each time you honor your word to yourself, each time you listen to your intuition instead of overriding it for comfort or approval. As this trust deepens, fear loses its authority. You stop second-guessing every decision. You stop asking the world who you should be. You remember that you have always known. Resilience does not require you to become cold or guarded. True resilience is flexible. It bends without breaking. You learn that you can be tender and strong at the same time. You can feel deeply without drowning. You can care without collapsing. Life will still challenge you, but it no longer defines you by what it takes from you. Instead, you become defined by what you choose to keep, your values, your compassion, your sense of self. This is the resilience that freedom cultivates. Uncertainty once felt like threat. Now it feels like possibility. When you stop needing control, you stop fearing the unknown. You learn to stand steady even when answers are incomplete. You trust the process without demanding guarantees. This does not make you passive, it makes you present. You meet life as it is, not as you wish it to be. And in doing so, you discover that peace is not found in certainty, but in your ability to remain grounded within change. Perhaps the greatest freedom is this: you stop leaving yourself behind. You no longer betray your needs to earn belonging. You no longer silence your truth to avoid conflict. You choose alignment over approval, honesty over harmony that costs your soul. This is not an act of defiance. It is an act of devotion to your own life. When self-abandonment ends, wholeness begins. You feel integrated, present, and real in your own skin. Pressure dissolves when you realize you are not late to your life, and there's no race to win, no deadline for becoming. Living freely means allowing your growth to be organic rather than forced. You move with grace instead of urgency. You respond with wisdom instead of panic. You understand that rest is not a reward, it is a requirement. And in this gentler rhythm, life feels spacious again. You are no longer building your life on fear or approval. You are building it on truth, trust, and inner strength. True freedom is not an escape from responsibility. It is a return to authenticity. It is the ability to live without the constant tension of performing, pleasing, or proving. When you stop caring in ways that imprison you, you do not become careless. You become intentional. You begin to live from your center rather than from expectation. Your choices reflect who you are, not who you fear disappointing. Freedom becomes less about what you reject and more about what you honor. Your time, your energy, your truth. There is a deep satisfaction in living a life that feels like your own. Your days no longer feel borrowed or scripted. You wake with clarity, move with purpose, and rest without guilt. You recognize that your worth is not measured by productivity or approval, but by presence. This is the life you were meant to inhabit. Not perfect, not untouched by hardship, but real, meaningful, and awake. When life feels like yours, even ordinary moments carry weight and beauty. Freedom reshapes the way you love. You no longer love to be chosen. You love because you choose. You offer connection without condition, but you do not abandon yourself to keep it. You understand that love should expand you, not erase you. This clarity allows relationships to be honest rather than anxious, mutual rather than one-sided. And when love ends, you grieve without collapsing, knowing that your identity was never dependent on being held by another. Living freely is not only a personal act, it is a generational one. When you choose truth over fear, you model courage for others. When you live aligned, you give silent permission for others to do the same. Your freedom becomes an inheritance, not through instruction, but through example. You teach by how you move, how you speak, how you stand in your life. This is how cycles end, not with force, but with embodiment. You no longer divide yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts. You welcome your softness, your strength, your contradictions, your becoming. You understand that wholeness is not perfection, it is integration. Nothing needs to be hidden. Nothing needs to be justified. You belong fully to yourself. And in that belonging, there is peace that does not need defending. This is what it means to stop caring in ways that bind you and start living in ways that free you. Not louder, not harder, but truer. You are not here to be approved. You are here to be alive. Let this be the moment you loosen your grip on what was never yours to carry. Let this be the moment you step forward unburdened, awake and whole. Your life is waiting, not for permission, but for your presence.